Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you may be. I'm glad you're able to join us for this edition of the News in English on Rwanda Television. My name is Sarah Shinhore. First, the headlines. The Nuclear Energy Innovation Summit for Africa has continued for a second day here in Kigali. Now, as we begin this edition, let us first inform you that on Wednesday at Green Hills Academy, His Excellency the President of the Republic and the First Lady of Rwanda participated in Grandparents' Day, where they enjoyed traditional Rwandan performances by the school's Nursery 3 learners. The day offered grandparents a memorable opportunity to celebrate Rwandan culture alongside their grandchildren. Now, government officials and researchers have observed that infrastructure is essential in the journey toward technological advancement and the use of nuclear energy. They also emphasize that this effort should be driven through strong cooperation among African countries. Adam Squizera with the details on that.
I am here because
The second day of discussions at the NISA focused on financing innovation, infrastructure development, cooperation, technology, and interstate collaboration in the search for sustainable energy solutions for Africa. Amandeep Singh Gill, the UN Secretary General's envoy on technology, highlighted that the rapid growth of the artificial intelligence AI must go hand in hand with the necessary energy infrastructure.
Sovereignty today means AI sovereignty, and AI sovereignty cannot be there without energy sovereignty. So, instead of taking technology from here and there, which may happen, I think to build the common talent pool, to build the common grid management practices, the interoperability, which will also give scale to the African entrepreneurs. If you're connecting the energy infrastructure, if you're connecting the digital public infrastructure, then an African entrepreneur, an AI entrepreneur sitting in Kigali can address the entire continent as TAM, as total addressable market. So I think those are the critical choices before policymakers here. And there is, as Paolo.
This was also emphasized by Alice Wase, CEO of the Rwanda Mines, Petroleum and Gas Board (RNB), who stressed the importance of reliable energy infrastructure in supporting Africa's mining sector and industrial development.
the advantage of SMR is the flexibility in scaling up. So if we take one mineral, there are different steps of refining it, meaning in semi-refined metal needs a certain amount of energy. And if you want to go further, it needs another amount of energy. So there is an opportunity to sequence SMR planning with mineral processing and value addition strategy in the long run.
Minister of ICT and Innovation, Paula Ingabire, noted that Africa's growing digital economy is expanding rapidly, but it still requires reliable energy systems to achieve sustainable development.
When you think about the energy architecture that is required, especially for nations that are trying to compete in a world where AI workloads, mineral processing are primary determinants for industrial competitiveness, then the conversation around energy becomes a priority for everyone. It's not an afterthought, it's not a parallel investment, but rather things that you do sequentially to ensure that you have the right environment for those industries to grow and contribute competitively, but also to make sure that you're not looking.
The discussions at the conference brought together delegates from different countries, company executives, policymakers, investors, regulatory bodies, and international partners. All participants shared a common goal of exploring the future of nuclear energy in Africa. Adam Squizera, RwandaTV News.
At the Nuclear Energy Innovation Summit for Africa, 3 cooperation agreements were signed, including 2 between the Rwanda Atomic Energy Board and institutions, including one specializing in nuclear energy security, as well as Allweld, a South African company that provides training and expertise for professionals working in nuclear power generation industries. The agreements are considered highly significant for the progress Rwanda is making toward beginning the construction of a small nuclear power plant.
Obviously, for Rwanda, the focus will be on artisans and technicians because they are the ones that will be very much involved in construction and operation and maintenance of your plant, and they make up the bulk of what is required in terms of human capital to construct. They also play a very important role in making sure that the plant runs safely and effectively. So the idea of the MOU is to make sure that we can transfer that skills and use what typically, in the other sectors you also have artisans, but in the nuclear sector there is a difference. So that difference is mainly in nuclear safety culture and error prevention tools. So these are the kind of tools that we will share to make sure that that we move people from non-nuclear to nuclear. So that's on the skills development side. On the other side, we can also help the industries to get them ready to play a meaningful role in the nuclear supply chain. So if you take a company similar to ours that perhaps does welding or mechanical, we could help them upgrade the quality management system so that they can supply their services as part of a nuclear supply chain. It can even extend to just a company that is supplying pipes or valves, upgrade their quality management system so that they are able to supply their local products or imported through them and to be used on your nuclear plants.
The third agreement signed was a cooperation partnership deal between the organizers of the summit and GIFEN, the Professional Trade Association representing the French, that is the entire French civil nuclear industry. Sylvie Berman, the president of the World Nuclear Exhibition, observed that the agreement will help Africa improve their organization and more specifically enable Rwanda to benefit from the expertise of various French nuclear energy specialists.
GIFEN chose Rwanda because it's one of the most dynamic countries in Africa, and also because there was a personal decision by the head of state, Mr. Paul Kagame. He's the one who organized the NESA and who has influence in other African countries. And to have a real world nuclear exhibition, we need Africa, and so we need Rwanda as well. There will be more concrete cooperation. And I think it will help NESA to convince other African countries to come to Paris for this nuclear event next year, December 2027. And also, we hope that more French companies will come to NESA and will participate in the cooperation with NESA.
Rwanda's Minister of Infrastructure, Dr. Jimmy Gasore, has pointed out that for Africa to develop industries capable of operating at a high standard, countries will need to present themselves on the international stage as a single market and jointly invest in electricity generation, particularly nuclear energy as a reliable source capable of providing continuous power supply. He has stressed that no country would be able to achieve this on its own without cooperation. He made the remarks during the Nuclear Energy Innovation Summit for Africa in a session focused on how African countries can work together, entitled Regional Cooperation and Deployment.
The success of the African continent free trade area will depend heavily on Africa's ability to provide reliable and affordable energy at scale. The AFCFTA represents a market of more than 1.4 billion people with a combined GDP exceeding $3.4 trillion US. It has the potential to increase intra-African trade by more than 50% and significantly expand regional manufacturing and industrial value chains. But industrialization cannot happen in the dark. Factories cannot operate competitively without stable electricity, and digital economies cannot thrive without reliable power systems. Regional trade cannot expand without an integrated infrastructure. The priority must be regional market aggregation. Individually, many African energy markets are relatively small, but collectively, Africa represents one of the world's largest emerging energy opportunities. Regional power integration can create economies of scale, improve project bankability, and reduce electricity costs, and attract long-term and infrastructure financing.
Now to other matters and financial sector. Experts believe the time has come for banks to start reducing interest rates on loans provided to small and medium-sized enterprises owned by women and youth engaged in agriculture and trade. They base this on the Rwanda Banking Sector 2025 report, which showed that the 9 commercial banks featured in the report registered a profit growth of as much as 18.5% that year. And Nora Gladys with more on that.
The Rwanda Banking Sector 2025 report indicates that the country's economy grew by 9.4% during that year, with financial institutions being among the key contributors to that growth. Financial sector analysts argue that the 18.5% profit increase recorded by commercial banks should encourage them to lower interest rates on loans offered to clients, as explained by the Chief Executive Officer of RG Partners, the company that produced the report, Matthew Rwirika.
The year 2026 should really be a year of thinking beyond the efforts that were put in 2025 in terms of analyzing information, for example, that banking customers are providing, entering into their business models, thinking about, for example, seasonalities of different businesses, and find a way to advise customers who are, I can say, championing their different sectors.
On the other hand, these financial and economic experts also believe that financial institutions should ease concerns for people seeking loans, especially since the total assets of the 9 commercial banks alone increased by 22.5%.
If a bank is making more profits, it might also reduce on the interest rates. Because part of the interest rate, part of it normally is to cover the risk margin. Yeah? So there are those operations, there are risks, there are, all those considerations. So if I'm making money, a lot of money from the business that I'm running, then there is a possibility that I can now reduce. If our local banks, if the Rwandan banks continue to make good profits, there are high possibilities that even interest rates will reduce, which means that the clients, that the borrowers will get less expensive loans.
So there is a need really to revamp the banking sector to focus on those sectors that are very critical for the economic transformation of our country. When you look at the current interest rate is not sufficient, is not affordable to a number of MSMEs. Even the requirement, cumbersome administrative requirement, really hinders the performance of MSMEs in the country.
Inflation reached 7% last year and rose to 9.2% in the first quarter of 2026, prompting the National Bank of Rwanda to increase the policy rate for banks to 7.25%. The governor of the National Bank of Rwanda, Soraya Kuziyaremye, assured that the financial sector will continue to remain stable and well protected.
But you can rest assured that the National Bank of Rwanda will continue to play its role as guarantor of monetary and financial stability. We remain committed to a data-driven and forward-looking monetary policy anchored on price stability. We will continue to strengthen how our policy decisions are transmitted to the economy while deepening financial markets. And more broadly, we will keep our macroeconomic policies under the ECF supported program by the fund well coordinated and carefully calibrated to build external buffers while continuing to advance structural reforms that strengthen resilience, support market development, and promote inclusive and sustainable growth.
The report further shows that bank loans increased by 24.4%, while the gross domestic product grew by 9.4% and inflation stood at 8.9%. Rwanda Banking Sector 2025 is a banking sector review prepared by RG Partners and published in the Kigali Financial Journal at the beginning of May this year.
The National Agricultural Export Development Board has announced that over the past 5 years, coffee generated more than $527 million for Rwanda from more than 185,000 tons exported. Coffee remains one of the country's leading export crops and among the largest sources of foreign exchange earnings. During the 2020-2021 fiscal year, exports stood at 16,000 tons, while during the 2024-2025 fiscal year, they had increased to more than 20,000 tons, generating over $110 million compared to over $61 million in the 2020-2021 fiscal year. The increase in coffee production has prompted NAIEB to expand infrastructure, including the acquisition of modern processing equipment. A year ago, the government of Rwanda constructed a laboratory worth more than 5 billion Rwandan francs for NAIEB for the testing of export crops, especially coffee and tea, to ensure that they meet the quality standards required on the international market. NAIEB is currently working to replace 26% of aging coffee trees across the country. Rwanda aims that by 2029, coffee exports will generate more than $115 million annually from over 32,000 tons exported. The Minister of National Unity and Civic Engagement, Dr. Jean Damascene Bizimana, has urged the staff members of the Rwanda Public Procurement Authority to uphold integrity in their duties and contribute to strengthening the unity of all Rwandans. He made the remarks during an event marking the 32nd commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. The event, attended by employees of RPPA and various partners, began with a visit to the Kigali Genocide Memorial located at Gisozi, where participants were briefed on the history before, during and after the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. After visiting the memorial, the RPPA employees and partners stated that they would further commit themselves to rejecting divisionism. The Director General of the Rwanda Public Procurement Authority, Jimmy Christian Byukusenge, stated that university students studying procurement had also been invited to the commemoration event so that they could understand how procurement processes were handled before 1994 compared to the way things are now. The minister, Minister Jean Damascene Bizimana, called on young people to demonstrate integrity in their responsibilities entrusted to them while promoting the unity of Rwandans, which he stressed remains the foundation of the country's development. More than 50 employees of RPPA and over 400 individual partners participated in the event. Martina Avera will be joining you for the next edition of the news. I'm glad you're able to join us for this one. Until I see you again, goodbye.